guys, it's Kelly. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing the 10 books I read in the month of January. 2020 is off to a great start for reading, but I unintentionally, or intentionally, whatever you want to say, I chose big books to read in January. And I started a big massive series that I wanted to start in December, but I started this month. And then, yeah, I'm going to be reading the second book in March, and that's 900 pages. And if you don't know what book that is, after I share my books that I've read this month, then I read a good chunk of books from the library, which is not going well for my, it's in the dark, but, the books I want to read off my bookshelves, turn on the light, all of these, I want, well, from here down, I need to read. These and up, I've read, so.
Sorry if I'm cutting in. I need this.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You forgot.
She's trying to get my books in order for me. My little helper. Okay.
I always do that, sorry.
And I'm also taking part in an A to Z reading challenge this year. The first two letters that I read for January were obviously A and B. For February, and for February till December, Sammy's going to be choosing two letters out of the cup right here. And whatever letter she chooses, that's the books I'm going to be reading for that month. And she's already chosen February's picks. Go and watch my February TBR. Is that up? No, it's not up. It will be before this. Yeah, so let's just get into it. I'm 2 minutes in, and I'm still word vomiting all over you. First book I read, I started reading in December, and I finished on New Year's Day, so that's messing up my page count on Goodreads, so I'm going to have to do some math at the end of the year, because I'm not doing it right now. No point. But that is Circle of Shadows by Evelyn Skye. This is a Asian fantasy set in a world where there's two types of people. There's a taiga that's been blessed by the goddess of the moon, Luna, with magical or fighting abilities, and then there's just plain citizens. The taiga warrior that we're following is Sora, I think, but her class name is Spirit because she's wild and free, and she's a year from graduating, and her Gemini is what's his name? I forget. I'll put it right here. I haven't read it since the beginning of January, and I'm lost. A taiga is a pair of warriors. Taigas are paired, and whoever they're paired with, that's their link, and they can like telekinesis and give magical abilities. And so you're away from graduating, and they get their first mission, and they are told to go into the woods, or no, not go. They are tasked to patrolling this town that has no problem, and on the way to celebrate Harvest Festival, they go into the woods where her Gemini was found. I forget his name. God damn it. And he was found being raised by wolves. And so he's got blue hair, and he's mocked for it. And so when they go into the woods, they can't find the wolves, they can't find his old pack. But they do find a wooden structure with a army. And they see somebody that is not supposed to be alive. That's all I'm going to say. Because the second book came out, or is coming out this month. It's called Cloak of Night. It's Cloak of Night. But, yeah. And this was one of the Fairy Loot books that I have on my TBR because I want to buy from the Fairy Trove. So hopefully it's still there. But, yeah. I gave it a 3 out of 5. No, I gave it a 4 out of 5. Got my reading journal, so my thoughts should be more clear. Okay, so the second book I read in January was Romanov by Nadine Brandis. I don't have my copy. This is a library copy. And I finished this on January 4th. And yeah, I had some feelings about this one. I loved how it was a Anastasia retelling. Growing up, I used to watch the cartoon movie Anastasia religiously. I ran my VHS copy down to the ground so much that it got stuck in my grandma's VHS player, via VCR, and I ruined it, and yeah. I never watched it again until a few months ago when my daughters watched it on Netflix. Okay. But yeah. How much of this was true? While reading it, I was researching. I've always been fascinated with Anastasia, and you would think that somebody as fascinated as I am would actually like get books and look it up, but I didn't. And so I looked it up, and I just want to know what is true and what was fiction. Well, some of it was fiction, but I know I've always heard the conspiracy theory that that Anastasia and her little brother survived the execution, and yeah. But I want to know if the exile at the house was true, and the Bolsheviks. Yeah, you're gonna knock that lamp over. Okay, I'm gonna go into my notes. I would not be able to forgive Zash for if this is a spoiler, then pause or skip ahead to this number. But I would not be able to forgive Zash, which was one of the Bolshevik soldiers that Anastasia formed a bond with.
Missy.
And yeah, he was one of the ones that executed the family, and he took a shot right at Anastasia, and that was the only shot he fired. And I would not be able to forgive him. She's so genuine, and I felt so upset. And all her sisters and her brother, Alexei. Ugh. But she did become a freaking badass on that horse. I did watch some conspiracy theory videos on how there was women claiming to be Anastasia Romanov years after, and how one person went to her grave still believing she was Anastasia, and she wasn't. That DNA proved that. And how not Prince William, but Prince Philip is related to the Romanovs. That just blew my freaking mind. And I want to know what does modern Russia think of the Romanovs today, because I tried to look, and it has Vladimir Putin this and Putin that, and it's just what's your thoughts, man? Do y'all I just want to know. I just want a clear answer, and they probably will never give it. Next one is the first book I read for my A to Z challenge, and that is A House in the Sky by Amanda Lindholt. All of these, this is nonfiction. All of my A to Z challenge books I will be reading are going to be nonfiction. And so this takes place, it's about a Canadian, and she was kidnapped in Somalia by the jihad. And it's about her 15-month captivity, and how her ransom takers, her kidnappers, kept trying to get her, the Canadian government and the Australian government, because the guy she was kidnapped with, he was Australian. And so it's about how her kidnappers keep demanding 1.5 million, 2 million, 2.5 million ransom from their governments, and the government's like, no, we're not paying you. And so they torture her, and they basically gang rape her, and she converts to Islam to make her captivity more safer, but it doesn't happen. Since she does that, she has to follow the rules, and in the Quran it says that the man or kidnapper has possession of that person, that's their property, and they can do whatever they want to that property and the guy who she was kidnapped with, basically, he was untouched. One of the things I have about this book, one of the questions I have, is that before she was released, once her ransom was paid by her family and Ned's family, I think his name's Ned. One of her kidnappers asked her, once she was free, how would she continue to spread Islamic and spread what is it called? Keep practicing Islamic faith and convert other people. And she was like, I will start a program and have an event set up, and I will also write a book. She came out with a book, and it vomits all about the jihad and Allah and the Quran and the Muslim faith. And it's got me thinking, is this book part of her promise? It doesn't like convert you to Islam, but it's got so much Arabic words, and it doesn't translate. My husband was saying, I don't know if this is part of her promise because it's not mentioned that, yes, this is part of her promise, and I wouldn't think that she would keep that promise, but she did go back to Somalia and help start a education center for Somali women. But what kind of education? I don't know. Probably math, reading, stuff like that. But you never know underneath the surface. You know, I may be reading too much into it and say, oh, this is just a promise that she made to keep her alive. But you never know. Next one. The War That Saved My Life by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. I read this with my kids, and this is about World War II. It takes place in London. It's about this little girl. She has a clubfoot, and it's about her time being stuck in an apartment. Her mother is ashamed of her, and her mother hates her, and she has a little brother. And so her little brother has got more freedom than her. Her little brother gets to go to school and go outside and play, and her mom keeps her locked up in the apartment. Schools start evacuating the children to the countryside because the government in London is feared that it's going to be bombed by Germans. And so all the kids get sent off to the countryside and gets fostered by these families. And so this little girl, she just leaves with her brother, and she goes to the countryside, and they are the last ones to be picked by people, and they get taken to this woman who didn't show up, who was adamant that no, she didn't want any kids, she didn't know how to raise them, and so she takes them against her will, and this girl has a hard time bonding with the woman, but she has this horse in the pasture that belongs to the woman. Yeah. The only problem I have with this book is the amount of abuse from the mom to this girl. She screams and cusses and just says the most evilest things, and was like, why do I have to pay to fix your foot? And all this and that. And they were just lying, trying to take my money, and it was just, ugh. And it leaves on a cliffhanger. So I'm going to have to read the second one. But I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 because the abuse was just Also, the war started at the very ending. It started being bombed towards the very end, and so it was more like the World War II was an afterthought while writing this book. And yeah, my mind's all over the place. My husband's home. He's the problem. Hey guys, next day, I couldn't finish yesterday. Ran out of space, and my husband was home. I don't like filming when he's home. But the next book is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This was my first 5-star read for 2020, and I thought it was going to take me like a couple days to read it, and I read it in 3 days. That's how fast it went. But it was so sad. Like in the second chapter, when the husband is summoned to go off to war, I was like blubbering a little bit, holding back tears. And at first I was like, I thought I knew. I was predicting what was going to happen, but plot twist after plot twist. And so, yeah, I started this on a Friday or Saturday, and I finished it on the Monday morning before 8 a.m. And trust me, don't read this early in the morning, because it'll ruin your whole day. Don't finish this early in the morning, because after I finished this and I closed it and it hit 8 a.m., I was just a crying mess. And the only time I've ever done that is when I watched the new episodes of The Handmaid's Tale, and those are just So this takes place in World War II. It takes place in Nazi-occupied France, and it also takes place in the future in Oregon. Now, I want to learn more about the women's resistance. What I think it kind of is based on true facts about women helping soldiers into Spain. I think it was Spain, yeah. I want to know if that was really true. And did some of the women have babies by the Nazis and never tell them? Is that a spoiler? If that is, I apologize, and if not, and if you don't care about this book and have not read it yet, then yeah. But yeah, I give this a 5 out of 5. I'm wanting to read Winter Garden. I think that's another World War II book. I'm not really interested in her other books. The Great Alone takes place in Alaska. I don't know about that one. I'm gonna have to listen to more reviews. If you've read it and think I will like it, then comment down below and let me know. This next one was a blog tour review that was supposed to be read a couple months ago, back in November or October. And my arc from NetGalley was missing, had blank pages, and I was like, wait, what? So that is The Light at the Bottom of the World by London Shaw. This is set in a future dystopian world where the whole entire earth is covered with water and everybody is living underneath the ocean. And so this takes place in London. They're scientists trying to figure out if they can eventually resurface and live on islands, and can't happen because shit's going on. But then the government's lying to all the people, saying yes, we'll be on the surface in a few years. So we follow a girl named what's your name? Layla. And she is Afghanistan Muslim. She's an Afghani girl, and her father is I forget. I know one of her parents was Irish, because her last name's McQueen, and it says that. But I forget which. I think her mom was Afghanistan, but anyways, she's Muslim from Afghanistan. She has family in Afghanistan. She really wants to go and visit her family. And so she participates in this London Marathon that's now converted to submersible rides. And it's basically like an obstacle course. They have to fight all these obstacles and fight with the other competitors. And there's 100 people that sign up for this competition every year. And whoever wins gets the ultimate prize. They could become royalty. They can be part of the royal family. They could be the ultimate citizen and get access everywhere. They can have more rights than the queen. It's no longer a queen. It's King George. Prince George. She is entering into this competition to win the prize so her father can be freed. He was arrested and said he was helping citizens commit suicide, like assisted suicide, because they had seasickness, which is like if you're staying in a gloomy place for too long and never see the sun, stay, like, if you went to Antarctica during the 6 months that it was dark and you stayed there with nobody by yourself, then you would ultimately lose your mind. Something like that. And so, yeah, she wants to win the prize to free her father, and then she learns some things about the government that is a little shady. So, I think there's a second book coming out this year, and I cannot wait. Also, I want to give a trigger warning. If you are afraid of water, oceans, or drowning, do not read this book at all, whatsoever. That's all I gotta say. This one is another blog tour spot that I did with Fantastic Flying Book Club. Fantastic Flying Book Club. I can't speak. And that is The Memory Thief by Lauren Manzi. I was supposed to read this in October, and I didn't get an arc. So I ended up doing a spotlight tour. But this is about a world that is set into 4 realms, and each realm has a master, and the citizens of these 4 realms, they're categorized into 4 groups: ungifted and gifted. The gifted can read and steal your memories, and the ungifted, you're just shit out of luck. You're the laborers, you're I'm sorry for the glare, you're normal people like me. I don't have no gifts. So they're laborers, workers, seamstresses, stuff like that. Farmers. And the criminals, you automatically get trialed and get executed, which is having your memory stolen during an auction and sold to the highest bidder. So the person who buys your memories will walk like you, talk like you, have your same mannerisms, everything, and have your favorite memory of all time. Like, one of my favorite memories is seeing my kids born, having my kids. Somebody could steal my memories, like a person who can't have kids, or person who just wants to experience. And so this world is a little terrifying, but I give this book a 3 stars because it was too fast paced. The author, she would have something like, the girl would be in this part, and then a sentence later she'd be all the way over here in a different part, which I know is a little confusing and it's a little spoilery, but that's my opinion. It was just too fast paced for me, and I found myself rereading multiple sentences multiple times to find out what was going on because I was confused. Second big book I read in the month of January, A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. I thought this was going to be a great read for me and that I was going to give it 5 stars like everybody else, but I ended up giving it 4 stars because of all the... Cover your ears. All 3 of you, cover your ears. The amount of rape and incestuous sex between brothers and sisters is just grossing me out. But I realized that's what happened in medieval times and to keep bloodlines pure, which is stupid. But okay. But the amount of that just, it knocked down a star for me. And so, if you should know what this is. I'm not going to tell y'all what this is about because y'all should know. It's about kings and fighting and thrones. Another thing I didn't like was all the names of the knights during the Hand of the King's tournament. Knight of this, knight of that, knight of this, knight of that. And it was just too much, and I was bored. I found myself skimming through the names, and Daddy might be calling you because he just called me and I didn't answer.
No, if Daddy was calling me,
I am going to be reading this series for this year. I am going to be reading a book every other month. So in March, I'm going to be reading book 2, A Clash of Kings. And right now I am watching season 1. I finished episode 2 last night, and I'm going to watch more tonight. And so far, I'm liking it. Yeah. But I bought the hardcover. Hopefully it was smaller because
dogs
Oh well.
Black dog.
But I don't care about that dog.
No.
Neighbor's dog's in my yard. I do have the mass market paperback, but I ended up having to get the library copy. The last big book that I read in January, I have one more book after this that I read, was Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the illustrated edition. I started reading this on December 30th, and I finished it on January 30th, so it took me a month to read it. And I have to say, the artwork, there was a tiny bit more than in Chamber of Secrets and Prisoner of Azkaban, but towards the end, it seemed like Jim Kay just wanted to hurry up and finish it because there was more text pages, full-on text pages and no pictures whatsoever on these pages. And then in a couple of chapters, there was more than one picture at a time, and then full spread pictures, and then no pictures. But yeah, and I found myself reading this and starting to tear up at the Cedric Diggory part and the ending, which never. I've only read A Goblet of Fire probably once, and that was with. I've read it fully once in my life. I have all of the books, and I remember trying to speed through it when I was in school, and I didn't finish it. I got halfway and I had to return my book to my friend because I had it for way too long. I was one of those people who took a book, never read it, and then gave it back. And when my kid was born, my oldest, I read all of the Harry Potter series once the last book came out. And that was the first time I read Goblet of Fire from beginning to end, and I didn't tear up at Cedric Diggory because I was wanting to read the rest. And so finally just sitting down and fully focusing on Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, I started tearing up, and I found it's got the Nifflers in here, which I completely forgot about. The Nifflers aren't in the movie. But yeah, I noticed way more this time in my second read of the Goblet of Fire. And yeah, I feel like a bad Harry Potter fan.
Really?
So now my kids are watching Order of the Phoenix, and I got 2 copies of the Order of the Phoenix, and I don't know why. But yes, I'm ready for the illustrated edition of the 5th book. This is the library copy. I do not own the illustrated editions, which I will be ruminating that very soon because I need them in my life, along with the house editions. I need Slytherin. And the last book I read in the month of January, it was my second pick for my A to Z reading challenge. It was the letter B, and that is The Boys in the Boat by Daniel James Brown. It's about the 1936 Olympics in Berlin, and I have the adapted for young readers edition, which I think is a part of why I didn't really enjoy this one. I give it a 3. If I would have read the original copy and not the adaptation, then maybe I would have gotten more information and it would have went into more detail. It's about rowing. You know, the thing where Lori Laughlin, ain't that her name? Screwed over USC and put her daughters on the crew team, and they had no idea what it was. Yeah, this is that, rowing. And so this is about the University of Washington rowing team and how they put their names on the map by beating all of the East Coast Ivy League schools, Harvard, Yale, in Poughkeepsie. And then they beat California. And they had to get funds they had to raise their own money to be able to go to Berlin. And how Germany and Italy tried to screw over the varsity team during the rowing competition, and yeah, how Hitler told all the German citizens not to mention the Jews and take down all the swastikas and all the flags and no Jews allowed signage, and pretend that they were a friendly nation. even though the world knew what Hitler was doing to the Jews. And how right after the Olympics, all of that shit went back up, and and then Hitler invaded Poland. So it goes into detail about that, but I found that the first 3 times that it was very repetitive. That it talks about Joe Rance's time in college, his first 3 years in college. It's like repetitive. How he was abandoned by his parents, and he learned how to live on his own. How to be able to win, he had to give all of his trust to his crewmates. And so, yeah, I'm probably going all over, and you're probably like, what the hell is she talking about? I've given 2 5-star books in January. That was Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire and The Nightingale. I've given 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 4-star, and 1, 2, 3 stars. I did not give any 2-star or 1-star, and I usually give a couple of those throughout the year. So that is it for my January wrap up. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button and comment down below, what did you read in January? Have you read any of these books? What do you think about A Song of Ice and Fire? Tell me how you feel about that series. Not the TV show, the books. Or, well, and how you feel about the TV show, because I'm in the middle of watching it. But yeah, I'll see you in my next video.